miracles under the sun. Greece is said to have 1,000 islands. In fact, there are at least 3 times as many. Welcome to a journey of discovery through the islands of Greece. This part of our series brings us to the eastern part of the Aegean, directly to the Dodecanese, which literally means the 12 islands. With the coast of Turkey within sight at all times, we cross 400 kilometers of fascinating landscape and explore their special characteristics. At the famous Monastery of Patmos, we visit the grotto in which St. John wrote the Apocalypse. Beyond the walls of the monastery, Anastasia is expecting us on her research vessel. On Kalymnos, Apostolos introduces us to the art of free diving, which is used for sponge fishing. On the island of Rhodes, we pay a visit to the mother of all European coffee bars and learn how the victorious Sultan used to comfort his harem girls. Before the cobbler Yanis explains to us why his handcrafted boots are still in demand, even by young people, in this tradition-steeped home island of Karpathos. And Sophia shows us what crucial roles women play in the windmill village and how they traditionally still pull the strings. We start our journey on the northernmost of all the Dodecanese islands, Patmos. Despite its small size of only 35 square kilometers, many Greeks regard it as one of the most important domestic islands. The reason for its importance becomes instantly apparent when approaching the island by air. Apart from its natural beauty, Patmos is unique in being home to many monasteries, churches, and chapels. Whether on a mountain ridge, in villages, or hidden in one of the many little bays, they are everywhere. It is said that there are 365 in total, one for each day. Jerusalem of the Aegean is a fitting nickname for Patmos. Peaceful everyday life in the island's capital is a reflection of the church's influence. Many residents earn a living from the pilgrims and tourists who visit the sacred places on this holy island. "260 meters above the capital, on the same spot where the temple of Artemis once stood, the Monastery of St. John was founded 1,000 years ago. Its walls withstood numerous attacks by pirates, and nobody has ever been able to conquer it. The monks' dearest treasures reside in the library, a very special place that the abbot calls the psychiatric ward.
Διαβάζοντας εκεί μέσα τα κατάλληλα βιβλία.
By reading suitable books, one can heal one's soul.
Και έτσι έχουν δώσει
That is why the library is called the Soul Hospital.
πάντα στις βιβλιοθήκες ως ψυχής ιατρίων.
The monks study the mainly religious texts to open their minds for more important matters, so they say, just like a prayer should help to realize the truth. 1,000 old manuscripts, about 2,000 printed works, and over 13,000 documents and bells are part of their inventory. Brother Polycarpos manages the collection and is struggling to slow down the natural decay of these priceless works, among which are original gospel manuscripts. St. John wrote his book of Revelation here, because in Roman times the island served as a place of exile, and the evangelist was held captive in this cave. This is where he slept, where he had his visions and heard the trombone-like voice of God between the cracks in the hard rocks. Everything he wrote in this very spot is still known as the Apocalypse. This is a description of the end of the world, Judgment Day.
Γιατί απλά όλοι προσπαθούμε να το δούμε με την μορφή
For us, the apocalypse is a future scenario.
αποκάλυψης του αύριο.
But it is not necessarily predicting the future, such as the prophecies of Nostradamus.
Δηλαδή δεν είναι ένα βιβλίο στον τύπο του Νοστράδαμου.
It is a book which says, this will happen, but fear not.
Έτσι, μη φοβηθείς.
Because in the end, the Lord will triumph. Fear not when evil reigns, because in the end, the Lord will be the victor. The monks attempt to stop the library's demise, namely the decay of the books, with modern techniques of restoration. Their main effort, however, is to transfer all writings onto microfilm in order to secure their content for future generations. The biggest problem, the enemy is keeping these treasures a secret from mankind. On certain holidays, it is not bells but hammer strokes that summon believers to the church service. Ten monks live in this monastery, but guests are welcome to participate in the Mass. The Greek Parliament officially acknowledged its status as a place of pilgrimage and formally declared Patmos a holy island. Every year, thousands of pilgrims visit this place during the holidays. The revelation of St. John later became the last chapter in the Bible, making Patmos a center of Christian worship and monastic culture. Patmos is surrounded by hundreds of splintered rocks and small islands, with allegedly an island for each day of the year. Some come in quirky shapes resembling various things, like a diving tiger, and are named accordingly. Not far from Patmos, we meet the Nereus, a brigantine, on its way to preventing the Aegean apocalypse. Anastasia and her co-workers from Archipelagos are out at sea almost every day, monitoring its conditions. They look for the dolphins that usually live in this area. Relying not only on their eyes, but also their ears, using underwater microphones, the environmentalists look for these shy sea mammals. They are not only shy, but they have also declined in numbers, obviously because they don't have enough to eat.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen, all for free. No subscription required.
Right now, we're experiencing a very important collapse in our fish stocks, in our fisheries. And at the same time, the several endangered and protected species that are in our seas are suffering by the lack of food. We see the change of behavior, we observe it because they're hungry. There's not enough fish in the sea for everybody.
Captain Thotoris lends a hand to help investigate this phenomenon. Slowly, he lowers an underwater camera into the sea. The waters appear to be cleaner, and yet there are fewer fish. The environmentalists' main interest is the vegetation at the bottom of the sea. Seagrass meadows are ideal breeding areas for schools of fish. This is where the whole fate of the maritime ecosystem is decided. These underwater forests are home to over 1,500 different species, plants, microorganisms, and fish, the basic food resources for dolphins. However, this useful layer of plants at the bottom of the sea shows signs of destruction in many places.
The damage on the seagrass meadow is dramatic. It will probably recover, if it ever recovers, over 100 years from now.
The staff of Archipelagos scanned hectare by hectare, document and ponder the condition of the seagrass meadows. This is necessary to confirm the interaction between the distribution of fish and the seagrass meadows, and thus adopt important measures to save the Aegean. What is causing this destruction? One reason may be illegal fishing by local fishermen. Another reason is the immense amount of private yachts. Furthermore, something different is threatening their habitat. An imported species of algae, which is replacing the seagrass meadows. The team of researchers wants to investigate this further and in more detail.
Is the Kalymnos there? Yes. Okay. Now they are looking whether this seagrass meadow has a problem by an invasive algae species, which is called Kalymnos racemosa. It's an invasive algae that has come to the Aegean Sea and to the Mediterranean through probably ballast water. It's a species that's normally it's native to Australia, and since the late 90s it has spread in a very worrying rate throughout the many parts of the Mediterranean, including the Aegean Sea.
Not much can be done against the invasive algae species, except monitoring its spread. Nonetheless, the members of archipelagos are still fighting for the survival of endangered marine life. Successfully so.
Well, our dream is to save what we can save before it's too late, and that's what we're trying to do. And it's very encouraging and very rewarding to see that it brings a result.
And finally, the crew encounters dolphins again. Maybe thanks to grace periods and fishing bans, both of which have been imposed by the government. We travel on in a southeasterly direction. From Patmos, we make our way to Leros and finally Kalymnos. Only the peaks of the once towering mountains can be seen. This used to be dry land, until massive earth movements drowned huge parts of the land in the sea. This is Leros Harbor, dug deep into the island. It is the biggest natural harbor in the eastern Mediterranean. The connected seaport turns out to be quite a curiosity. Built entirely in the fashion of the 1930s during the Italian occupation, the old city was completely torn down and redesigned from scratch. Architecturally, it is unique in Greece. Still, residents remain skeptical about this monumental splendor. Many of the Art Deco buildings are vacant. Right next door, we find Kalymnos. In the ancient world, it was called the Island of Good Water. However, it actually suffers from a water shortage, like many places in the Dodecanese. A single valley in the eastern part of the island pools Kalymnos' water supply and transforms this place into an oasis. Its name is Fati, which means where the lemons blossom. Even up in the mountains, people say one can smell the lemon scent. Within the cliffs along the coast, we find goats and other rock climbers. Many residents of the island make a living not mainly from goats or crops, but from what the sea has to offer. This is Potia, on the southern part of the island. Right here, people used to make their living from a very special product of the sea, which made Kalymnos famous far beyond the Dodecanese. Sponges. Kalymnic gold was the name of this lucrative treasure from the bottom of the sea. The Skandalopetra, free divers, lived a perilous yet profitable life. At first, men in diving suits replaced them. Nowadays, specialized vessels do an even more efficient job in open water. Apostolos' grandfather was a sponge diver, but there are hardly any sponges left near the island, which is why Skandalopetra diving stopped being a profession and became a sport instead.
Όταν ήξερα ότι ο παππούς μου έκανε αυτή τη δουλειά,
When I first heard that my grandfather had this job, I got curious.
Και έτσι
That is why I wanted to try it myself, as a sport.
σαν σπορ.
Apostolos wants to show us how free diving works nowadays, together with a diving instructor, Athanasios.
Γνωρίζω ότι το χρησιμοποιούσαν για βιοποριστικούς
I know that
σκοπούς
some time
καθαρά.
ago, diving with a Skandalopetra was only done to earn a living,
Ξέρω επίσης από
and that it has a
ιστορικές
rich
αναφορές ότι
tradition.
πάει πολύ μακριά η παράδοση της Σκανταλόπετρας. Τότε ήταν τα πράγματα πολύ πιο απλά.
Everything used to be a lot easier.
Εκεί, ο κολαουζέρης
There was a
πάνω
fishing
οποίος
boat
κρατάει το
with the
σκηνή και
Kalouseris
προσέχει
standing on
το
deck,
δίτη, γιατί
holding the
κατά
rope
είναι
and
ομαδικό,
watching
είναι
out for the
ατομικό.
diver,
Και ο δίτης, ο οποίος
who was
έφευγε,
collecting sponges, and
κατέβαινε κάτω στο
when he
βυθό,
was ready to be
βάζει τα
brought back up
ζυγάρια
to the surface,
και με το
he
σινιάλο
signaled
του δίτη
by
μετά ο
pulling on the
κολαουζέρης
rope.
τον έβαζε πάνω. Προσπάθησε να έχεις έναν έλεγχο της αναπνοής. Χαλαρά και κλείσει τα μάτια και σκέψου ότι βουτιά.
Free divers don't use compressed air bottles when going down in the water. That is why the breathing technique is of crucial importance. After all, they want to hold their breath for at least 2 minutes so that they can reach a depth of 50 meters.
Όταν
The first time I tried it myself, I was only 11 years old.
Μέγιστη εκπνοή. Το που το κάνει ξεχωριστό είναι ότι
The special thing about being a
κοιτάς πάνω με
Skandalopetra
το μαγιό
is diving while only wearing bathing shorts, which requires a lot of concentration so that
πρέπει
one
να
can
είσαι
withstand the
τελείως
cold.
άδειος, διότι έχεις να αντιμετωπίσεις το κρύο. Και μόνο που γίνεται αυτή
The
η
emptiness in
μεταφορά
yourself,
συναισθημάτων από τη στιγμή που
right
φύγεις από
from
την
the moment
επιφάνεια,
when you are not on the
αυτό είναι
surface
όλη
anymore.
η βουτιά
That
αυτή
is
εδώ,
what
η
this
μαγεία
sport
είναι
is
το
all
πράγμα.
about.
Το πώς θα
It's about
κοντρολάρεις τον
control,
εαυτό σου μέσα
feeling
στο νερό,
nothing,
να μην
and
νιώθεις
just
τίποτα.
focusing on
Νιώθεις μόνο τη
diving.
βουτιά.
A stone helps the diver to descend. A rope tied to the wrist connects the diver to his co-partner on the surface.
Κάτσε, παίρνει το χέρι σου. Ωραία. Ωραία. Το να κοιτάς να είναι πάντα σφιχτό. Ωραία. Και αυτό εδώ να μας φύγει, να μας φύγει. Ωραία, πάρ' το με τα χέρια σου τώρα εσύ. Έτσι. Καλά. Όρισε. Σφίξε. Σφίξε. Να είναι σφιχτά, έτσι.
Το μόνο που μου είχε πει να κάνω
The only thing my grandfather told me was to make the sign of the cross before diving.
Μερικές φορές
Sometimes when I'm not properly prepared, I'm anxious.
υπάρχει φοβία. Πώς αισθάνεσαι?
Deep down, you are all alone.
Ότι είσαι ολομόναχος.
κάτι, ξέχασα. Τι ξέχασα.
Πρέπει να το ζήσει κάποιος για να το
You have to
καταλάβει.
experience it yourself to understand.
Εγώ νιώθω απλά ζωντανό.
I feel alive, as if I would live down there, as if the subconscious surpasses the conscious mind.
Δεν νιώθεις ούτε κρύο, ούτε έλλειψη αέρα.
You neither feel the cold, the lack of oxygen, nor the worries in your head. All you experience is emptiness and a noise coming out of nowhere, filling your body with energy.
Σου γεμίζει το σώμα με ενέργεια. Και το συναίσθημα της χαράς ότι έχεις μπορέσει και
And a feeling of
κατακτήσει
joy once you've conquered your fear of the depth of the sea.
Αυτό είναι καθαρά
That's the moment you're living for.
ζεις πραγματικά εκείνη τη στιγμή.
Starting from Kalymnos, the journey leads us south, always parallel to the Turkish coast. On the way to Kos, we pass Pserimos. A single beach is home to the few islanders. Places like these seem to freeze the course of time for its residents. Streets are not asphalted and don't need to be. The longest distance can be crossed in just 1 hour. A short sailing distance away, roughly 4 kilometers, lies the green island of Kos. This is the home of the famous doctor Hippocrates. In the center of the island is one of the most eminent sanitariums and medical schools of ancient times. Even over 2,000 years ago, visitors came here for treatment. The world's first hospital stood on this very spot. A lake close to the shore, which was used by islanders to harvest sea salt, now serves as an ideal place for water birds to spend the winter. Ten kilometers away from Kos's long beaches lies Nisyros. Over 150,000 years ago, massive lava eruptions moved huge amounts of rocks. Many more followed, which created a gigantic caldera. Tuff and pumice remain as evidence of these bygone catastrophes. It still steams in many places. Nisyros volcano is merely asleep, an uneasy slumber. For years now, geologists have recorded distinctly increasing subterranean activity. Frequent earthquakes and rising gas temperatures suggest that ascending magma is smoldering underneath the island. Gas-spewing fumaroles have colored parts of the caldera yellow. Yet, nobody speaks of imminent peril. However, real treasures have been left by the volcano in its vicinity, and for a long time, people knew how to use them. In the past, brimstone especially was in high demand for export. The pumice trade still flourishes today. It is still mined on a grand scale on Giali and shipped to markets in Europe, the USA, or Asia. This porous material is a popular raw material for the building industry. One day, the island will disappear once more. Rhodes, our next destination, is primarily known for one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Colossus of Rhodes. This was a 34-meter-high bronze statue, which in ancient times straddled the entrance to the harbor. The monument has vanished entirely, but it is still present in souvenir shops. Nobody has ever found any remains of the sun god Peleus' likeness. Allegedly, the Colossus collapsed during an earthquake. The bronze remains were then collected and, ultimately, melted down. Rhodes, the name originates from the ancient Greek word for rose, was one of the wealthiest cities in the world in ancient times. In the 12th century, Rhodes became a staging post for many crusaders and pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land, including Richard the Lionheart. The Byzantine emperor granted Venetians, and later on the Knights of St. John, permission to settle in Rhodes, mainly to protect the island from Islamic-Arabic advancement. Nevertheless, in the end, even the most sophisticated fortifications could not withstand Sultan Suleiman's superiority. The Crusaders suffered defeat and consequently had to leave the island. Up until 1912, the Turks were in control of the island. Even today, many Turkish people still live in Rhodes. Yusuf Kibrisli is one of them. He is a native Rhodesian and manages the Islamic library opposite the Suleiman Mosque. My family has lived on Rhodes since 1522. My ancestors initially came to fight with the Sultan and later stayed to live here. I'm the last generation of my family. My great-grandfather was the head of canonry. Streets from the time of the Crusaders, as well as many bazaar-like neighborhoods, can be found in Rhodes' townscape. Yusuf Kibrisli takes us to a special cafe in the Old Town, the oldest coffee house in all of Europe. The coffee trade here can be traced back to the 14th century, This is where the burnt brown beans started their triumphant march through the rest of Europe. Ground coffee and sugar are mixed together, boiled with water, just like 600 years ago. Old records imply that the Sultan had problems soothing his many wives. So he encouraged his confectioners to come up with an idea. It was their assignment to create something special which would settle the unrest within his harem. His confectioners zealously began to mix syrup made from sugar together with nuts, honey, almonds, spices, and dried fruit. And as a result, created delicacies deeply rooted in today's culture of Rhodes. In Greece, coffee was always called the Turk. When ordering a coffee, people used the phrase, "Get me a Turk." Since Greece's defeat in the Cyprus dispute, the advertising industry has promoted a change of name. "Get me a Greek" is used nowadays in many places. Although the name has changed, the beverage itself hasn't, either in taste nor in ingredients. Turkish influence in Rhodes vanished over the course of time. Many Turkish-born Rhodesians got used to the Greek way of doing things. The Turkish community is continually declining, leaving only one mosque of many still in use. We don't have an imam. Our religious books are what is special. This one here, the Quran, is 900 years old. The library was built as early as 1793. Ever since then, it has housed valuable manuscripts in Arabic, Turkish, and Farsi. Among others, a chronicle about the Turkish takeover in 1522. It is Rhodes' memory of Islamic identity. It was vital to have a library here on Rhodes, so that Islamic roots are not forgotten. Turks, Persians, Macedonians, Romans, Athenians, Italians, Britons, all occupying forces left their traces throughout history on this strategically well-positioned island. Rhodes is a living history book at the very edge of Europe. Over Psirmos, Kos, Giali, and Nisyros, coming to Rhodes, we have finally reached the southernmost point of our round trip. Buffeted by the wind is Karpathos. This extreme tip of the Dodecanese is where the original Greece begins. The landscape here is considered to be almost inaccessible even today. It is also where Greeks are more aware of their traditions than anywhere else. Pirates and conquerors have never been interested in this area, as no one assumed they would find loot here. Hidden by the sea by the mountainside, inhabitants settled here in the 7th century. By this ruse, Olympus became a refuge and remained undetected for hundreds of years. Yannis Prearis, a cobbler, still manufactures boots the traditional way, just like his ancestors.
My
whole family has had this job. My grandfather, my uncle, my father, and now me. But I have to say that I am the last one in my village who makes these shoes, as well as the traditional slippers. Yannis' workshop still looks like it did in his grandfather's time. He uses only traditional tools and no machinery. The process makes the leather very robust. Adjusted to the conditions and the soil we find here, so locals have no problems with their agricultural chores. Yannis makes the leather himself in his own tannery. For this, he uses natural resources: herbs, ash, chalk, and chicken manure. After this, he uses olive oil and pig grease to further process the leather to make it more elastic. Each pair of shoes requires 3 days of work. Everything is precisely measured handiwork, and each pair is one of a kind. And his customers appreciate this. And take the worn-out merchandise to be repaired by the master himself.
Από την κατασκευή του, αυτό εδώ, για παράδειγμα, είναι ένα
Here we have a stivani, for example, to be worn while working in the fields. That is why the sole is made out of car tires, to make them very resilient.
Και μια ειδική σόλα, η οποία είναι από λάστιχο από αυτοκίνητο, για να έχει μια μεγαλύτερη αντοχή και...
This flat boot has hardly any heel at all, to support strong footing, even when there are no paths. This here, the upper shoe, is extra long to protect the leg from small branches, injuries inflicted by sharp rocks, thorns, or snake bites. Olympus, the mountain village, once inhabited by 1,500 people, not only lies hidden from the sea, but also next to nearly inaccessible cliffs. the ever-stormy winds not only made it hard for pirates to land here, but they also powered Olympus' 65 windmills. Nearly every family used to kibble their own grains.
Sure.
Only a few of the numerous windmills are still operational. Zofia Farmakidi and her husband Vasily are the only ones still upholding this tradition in a mill belonging to Sofia.
We inherited this mill from our grandmother. It's said to be over 200 years old.
Vasily keeps the old wheelwork intact, almost as if his and his wife's bread and butter still depend on this family heirloom.
It used to be that the eldest daughter inherited her mother's assets, but we didn't have much to pass on anyway. Nowadays, we're not so strict.
Olympus' law of inheritance is somewhat special. Daughters inherit from their mothers. In this way, women can maintain independence and are able to secure the family's existence, even if the men leave.
We just don't have enough. That's why they've all immigrated. To Germany, America, Canada, Australia. They've gone everywhere.
Όλα τα μέρη σχεδόν. Έχουμε και στην Αυστραλία, παντού, παντού.
My husband didn't want to go. My parents and all my siblings are in America. But we've stayed here.
Sofia still bakes bread almost daily, even though all her children left home long ago. Today they live in Rhodes, Crete, and Athens. There used to be over 200 children in this village. Today, only a few young ones are still around. Yanis is glad that some of them still appreciate the traditions and order the traditional stivani from him. It gives him the feeling of having made the right choice by staying.
Βεβαίως και τις γιορτές με τους συμμαθητές μου.
I still have regular contact with my friends and classmates who have left. They visit during the holidays or we telephone each other. Thanks to new technologies, we can keep in touch by email or the radio. At dawn, Giannis turns into a radio host. Using an online radio, he contacts Olympus' former inhabitants who have left to see the world but still express their solidarity.
Πάμε λοιπόν να ξεκινήσουμε το πρόγραμμά μας αυτή τη στιγμή όπως πάντα. Και τους ευχαριστώ όντως γι' αυτό.
I'm very grateful. They give me strength. Because back then when I was young, I was also thinking about getting a new profession and leaving the island.
Συνομήλικοί μου να πάω κάπου αλλού και να μάθω μια άλλη τέχνη.
From time to time, Giannis stays up all night hosting his program. He connects friends from all over the world with his home at the very end of the Dodecanese.